Good evening. I'm truly honored to be here with you tonight, and thank you to the Foundation for inviting me, and thank you all for sharing in this moment. We are here in memory of Sergio de Mello and the 21 other men and women, most of them United Nations workers, who died in him in the bombing of the United Nations headquarters in Baghdad in August 2003. We remember all those who died to acknowledge each valuable life cut short and families who serve even today in their sacrifice. We also remember them for the power of example. They set brave individuals from 11 different countries working to help the Iraq people at the direction of the United Nations Security Council and on behalf of us. This is sometimes forgotten that in serving under the United Nations flag, they died in our name as our representative, and at their head Sergio was man of extraordinary grace and ability, as many who knew him will testify. A man who gave 30 years to the United Nations, rising from a field receiver to High Commissioner for Human Rights and Special Representative to Iraq. From Bangladesh and Bosnia to South Sudan to East Timor, he spent a majority for his career in the field, working alongside people forced from their homes by war and assisting them with his skill as a diplomat and negotiator. Perhaps the greatest testament to his contribution is how much its advice would be valued today. As a Syrian conflict enters its 7 years, as we left off, the greatest refugee crisis since the founding of United Nations, as 20 million people on the brink of death from starvation in Yemen, Somalia, South Sudan, and Southeast Nigeria. I cannot imagine that there is anyone in the leadership of United Nations who would not welcome the opportunity to consult Sergio or send him into the field once more. He truly missed. It is humbling for me to speak tonight in the presence of members of Sergio's family and his former colleagues. I never knew Sergio, but I have stood before the statue in the place where he died. I felt profound sadness at the fact that conflict in Iraq, the source of so much Iraq suffering on this day, had claimed the life of men and women, thus only intention was to try and improve a desperate situation. But I also saw clearly the value and nobility of life spent in service of others. Sergio was a man who never turned down an assessment, but no matter how difficult and dangerous, or as another have burdened, but handed the one impossible task as after another. He was a man, to borrow the words of Thomas Paine, was country, was the world, and was religion, was too good. He always remained an hero and inspiration to all who follow in footsteps. The United Nations work did not end there. In the robbery of Canal House 14 years ago, hundreds of United Nations staff have served and continue to service in Iraq, as they do from Afghanistan to Somalia, because the task of building peace and security can never be abandoned, no matter how bleak the situation. My thought on Sergio life and legacy to serve from my 6 years with UNHCR that I can see and spend so much on this career service and representing, but also speak as a citizen for my country, the United States. I believe all of us who work with the United Nations preserve this duality. The United Nations is not a country, it's a place where we come together as nation and people to try to resolve our difference and united in common action. Hacking into the secret communication of bacteria, Fatima Azahra Al-Rakidi. As a citizen, I find myself look out on a global environment that seems more troubling and uncertain than any time in a lifetime, and I imagine many of you feel the same. We are grappling with a level of conflict and insecurity that seems to expect our will and capabilities, with more refugees than ever before, with new wars erupting on the top, escalating conflicts, some already lasting decades. We see a rising tide of nationalism masquerading as patriotism, and the re-emergence of police encouraging fear and hatred of others. We see some political elected party on the basis of dismissing international institutions and agree as if you country have not benefit from cooperation but actually being harmed by it. We hear some leaders talking as if some of our proudest achievements are in the fact as our biggest liabilities, where it is the traditions severely introducing refuge into societies are insanity, and we have built root in the laws and human rights. We see national that play a proud role in the founding of the International Criminal Court, withdrawing from it. On the one hand, on the one author, we see arrest warrant to allege war crimes issue but not implement, and other crimes ignore altogether. We see a country like South Sudan answered by the international community into independence and then lots of opportunity, but not by the United Nations, I can see, and no, but basically abandoned without the massive support they need to make a success of sovereignty, and we see revolution and loss on protection and the civilian and the use of subliminal weapons and stance flawed rapid, rapidly, and in some cases under cover of security control photos as in Syria. Many of these things are not new but taken together, and we know absence of strong international leadership. They are deeply worrying. We, when we consider this often and more as citizens, what is our answer? Do we ask some would encourage us to think on our back on the world and hope that the storm will pass? Or do we strengthen our commitment on diplomacy and the national United Nations? I strongly believe there is only one choice: demand the preparation as well as confidence, which is hard work of diplomat and negotiation and reform the United Nations. This is not to say that in any way this is an easy road, and there are reasons for people to feel insecure today. The level of conflict and the lack of solution combined with the fear of terrorism, we really that globalization was brought fast benefit to some and worse the lot of other the sense of disconnect between citizen and government, or in some country in the like of governments the overall that feeling for all our gains in technology and connectedness, the less we are in control of for shaping our life. Thus, this factor and more have contributed to the sense a world of balance, and there are no easy answers. And des- despite the million of people who have lived themselves our prophecy in our lifetime, the difference between the life of those born in wealthy democratic societies and those born into the slum and refugee camp in the world is a prone injustice. We see it and we know it's wrong at a simple human level, that inequality is contributing to instability, conflict, and imagine us to the sense that the international system serves under view the expense of money. The power of positive thinking. But again, what is our answer as citizens to withdraw from the world where before we feel a responsibility to be part of solution? I am a proud American and I am a internationalist. I believe the uneven commitment to human rights is mean seeing to the world with a sense the fairness and humanity right, like recognizing our own humanity in the struggle of other. It isn't from love one's country but no at the expense of other, from patriotism but not from narrow nationalism. And includes the view that success isn't being better or greater than other, but feeding your place and the world where other success to that strong nation like a strong person help other to rise up and be independent. It is the spirit that made possible that cre- creation of the United Nations out of the rebellion in the running and 60 million death of World War II, so that even before we thought of defeat Nazism was complete, that generation of wartime leader for working the United Nations. If governments and the leaders are not keeping the flame of internationalism alive, we must as citizens be mass. The challenge is how to restore that sense as balance, hop- hopefulness in our countries while not sacrificing all we have learned about the value and mystery of internationalism, because a world in which we turn our back on our global responsibilities will have a world that produces greater insecurity, violence, and danger from us. And for our children, that's not a clash between idealism and realism. It is the recognition that there is no shortcut to peace and security, no substitute for the long, painstaking effort to conflict, expand human rights, and strengthen the rule of law. We have to challenge the idea that the strongest leaders are those willing to dismiss human rights on the ground of national interest. The stronger leader that those who the capable to doing both, having strong values, the will to act upon the doesn't weaken our brother or our militaries, and it is there as sensational foundation. None of this to say that the United Nations is perfect. Of course, we know it is not. I have never met a field officer who has not realized, I guess, its shortcoming, as I imagine Sergio did in his darkest moment, and he, like all of us, wanted a United Nations that was more decisive, less bureaucratic, and that living up to this standard, but he never said it was pointless. He never threw it in the towel. The United Nations are an imperfect organization because we are imperfect. It is not spared from us. Our decision, particularly those made by the Security Council, we have played a part creating in the landscape that we are dealing with today. We should always remember where the United Nations was formed, and what is it for, and take that responsibility very seriously. We have to recognize the damage we do and undermine the United Nations or use selectively, not at all, or when we rely on aid to do the job of diplomacy and give the United Nations impossible tasks and then underfund it. For example, today there is not a single humanitarian appeal anywhere in the world that is found by even half to what required, in the fact worse than that. April, the country on the brink of famine, where today 70%, 7%, and 5% founded, for example. Of course, emergency aid is not the long-term answer. No one prefers that kid of aid. Not not citizen or donor countries, not government, not refugees. They do not want to be dependent. It would be far better to be able to invest all of our fund in infrastructure and school and trade and enterprises. Paris of posterity Alexander Hamilton had a sectional dog and approaching state X Bacon Street, but let's be clear, emergency aid has not continued because many states cannot or will protect the rights of citizens around the world. It is that we spend in the country where we have not diplomacy or our diplomacy is not working. And until we do better at preventing and reducing conflict, we single of having to help feed other people with society's collapse as another legendary United Nations leader who was also killed in the line of duty duck, Hammer George said everything will be right. You know when people just stop thinking of the United Nations as a weird Picasso abstraction and see it as a drawing they made themselves. The United Nations can only change if government change their policies, and if we as a citizen ask our government to do that is a moving. If we think about it, we are the future generation and philosophy envisioned in the United Nations Charter when our grandparents refer to spare future generation the source of war. As written, they were thinking of us, but as we're dreaming of our stability, they also have us a responsibility. President Roosevelt addressing the United Nations Congress in January 1945, 6 months before the end of World War II, said this in the field in the foreign policy. We promise to stand together with the United Nations, not for the war alone, but for the victory of which the war was fought. And he went to the Frame Foundation, and we built, and it will build, we will be built the continuance and assurance of a living peace in the long run must be work of these people themselves. So today we have to ask ourselves if we are living up to that mission we gave us to that star. What have we done with it? It is clear to me that we have made hugs, hard strides, but our agreement and institution are only as strong as our will to uphold them. And if we do not, for whatever reason, we requit that trigger or more unstable to all those who come after us. It is not for that previous generation should put and worked so hard on behalf of all of us. The memory of those who came before us held us true to our ideals, resulting unchanging in time. They remain us who we are, we stand for. They give us hope to stay in the fight as Sergio did until his last breath. 14 years since his death, there is a stronger need than ever before for us to stay true to the ideals and purposes of the United Nations that was, is, I hope his memory helps us today. We cannot all be serious, but I hope all of us can determine that we shall be generation that renews this commitment to unite our strength to maintain international peace and security, and to promote social progress and a better standard of law, life in large freedom. But in the final analysis, even if we do not, even if that level of vision eludes us and we continue to simple manage rather than to try overcome our generation challenge, we just have to keep working determinedly and patiently. And you can be certain that as you do that you follow the example of one of United Nations Finance and to do even a little of his good to apply ourselves to the working he left unfinished. It wherever where we can is a worthy as for of us. Thank you.